Viewers, as you all know, the NDA, the National Democratic Alliance, is marking Prime Minister Modi's 11th consecutive and eventful year in office. As you know, there have been a large number of press conferences that have been held all across the nation, bringing out facets of Mr. Modi's tenure. It's been 11 years, as I said, and we have with us Union Minister, Mr. Hardeep Puri, perhaps the most articulate spokesperson of this government and someone who has been deputed also to internationally argue India's case in different fora. Mr. Puri, thank you very much for speaking to me today. I want to begin with a portfolio that sort of you handle, the economic portfolios. One of them you handle. So I want to start really with the economy. India now the fourth largest economy in the world. It's supposed to overtaken Japan, as you know. We're on our way onwards, and depending on different estimates, but conservatively by 2027 we should be the third largest. And then of course there is only China and the United States standing in the way of global domination. But the question remains that growth has been somehow stymied by stubborn inequality. You know the figures. How does the government now plan to build on the growth that it has given to ensure that we don't have these inequalities in society?
Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for the very generous introduction. I'm only a small Karyakarta of the BJP. I've had the privilege of serving in Mr. Modi, the Honorable Prime Minister's team, now nearly 8 years. And I am entirely in agreement with you on the growth figures. Those are empirically verifiable. We have gone from being a 2 some trillion economy in 2014 to a 4.3 trillion economy now. If you compare our rates of growth currently with those whom we have overtaken, like countries like the UK and Japan, and the country which we are likely to overtake, Germany, why one can say with confidence that we will overtake Germany before even 2027 is because we are growing. If the last quarter is any set of figures to go by over 7%, and we are expected to grow by over 6.5% by all the global analysts. So if we are growing at 6.5% and the others around us are growing at 2%, then it doesn't need knowledge of rocket science to know we will be the third largest economy. Insofar as the point of inequality is concerned, Rahul, you know, I have a special affection for you. You are the one person who introduced me onto the electronic media when I came back from a career in the civil service. Sure. I respectfully disagree on the inequality part. And let me share the following with you. India was growing even earlier. India is growing faster now. But what distinguishes the current growth is that the benefits of development, the kind of goods and services which are being delivered are now actually percolating down to the grassroots people. People below the poverty line, people who are the so-called economically weaker section. Let me explain. The portfolios in which I have been associated. The current portfolio, petroleum and natural gas, I've held the job nearly for 4 years. Actually, I complete 4 years today. What happened? You had gas cylinders even in 2014. There were 14 crore gas cylinders, which means 14 crore gas connections, which means 14 crore families were serviced. Those have increased to 33 crores. But Rahul, the 14 crore cylinders in 2014 were primarily urban connections. It was urban households which were benefiting. Before I arrived on the scene in 2016, the Honorable Prime Minister introduced the Ujjwala scheme, which takes the clean cooking medium of cylinder gas to economically weaker section. And out of the 10 crore 30 lakh connections which have been given under the Ujjwala scheme, 80% of them are in rural areas. Mm-hmm. Number two, let's talk about other issues, going away from energy. Let us go to the social scheme which started in 2015 June, after the Prime Minister was elected in May 2014. All those schemes, you've gone from women-centered development to women-led development. If you build 4 crore Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana units, these are all primarily for people who are not the affluent people. Then, apart from 4 crore Awas units, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana units, you've decided to build another 3 crore of those units. 7 crores, that's 70 million. 40 million already done, another 30 million. These are all growth percolating down. The beneficiaries are not the well-to-do people, but those who are either below the poverty line or suddenly above it. Now,
True.
one clinching figure.
Yeah.
I see that the party president, Nadda ji, has been giving a figure of 25 crore people lifted out of multidimensional poverty. Actually, the figure is higher. It is 279 million is the figure which was given by the World Bank only yesterday or day before. What does this mean? It means that absolute poverty has come down to 5.3% of the population. Rahul, in 2014 it was 27%.
So
I think
I'm agreeing with you. There has been movement forward. My question was not that there hasn't been movement forward. It's verifiable. The statistics are there. You've just quoted the World Bank figures yourself. So there's no dispute about that. The point is the disparity. Certainly we can't argue against that. Wealth remains concentrated in the hands of the rich overwhelmingly. So that's why I asked you, what's the roadmap ahead for that? I mean, you know, you've done a fantastic job by sourcing, for example, petroleum from different parts of the world. That's kept inflation remarkably low. We haven't had a problem with inflation, but despite having said that, you know, we need to know, because there are global headwinds. You know the problems. There's Trump, there's tariff warfare going on, there's the Ukraine crisis. So how do we sustain this and make it much more rewarding for the poorer sections of our society, sir?
I totally agree with you, Rahul. I totally agree with you. Wealth creators will accumulate more wealth. On that, I have no doubt. That's not only an Indian case, that is a global case, and India is a true reflection of that. The issue is, do they pay their taxes? Do they contribute to the country's development? And that's something you can discuss. I think they do, and they should be increasingly doing even more by way of corporate social responsibility or other Samaj Seva. But you've hit on a very important point. I think the crux of it lies in you have a growing economy, your per capita income has increased, but to reach the kind of situation you're talking about, the per capita income has to multiply 5 times. And I think that will happen, because the GDP will go from 4.3%, 4.3 trillion to 7 trillion, 10 trillion. And then when the journey to Viksit Bharat takes place, 2047.
Okay, so Mr. Puri, people say that for that to happen, for that monumental sort of growth in the way you've sort of reflected it, for that to happen, you need to grow at 8%. We're a bit short of 8%. And looking back, do you think things could have been done differently? For example, DEMO and other such experiments. Why are we still stuck at 6.5 when 8 is the recommended number?
Rahul, you're absolutely bang on target. We need to grow at 8%. But then I think there are some things you've done well. Some things there's no point commenting on because they're a thing of the past. I think if you look at the overall size of the economy, you are growing at more than 6.5%. But what is it that takes? What is it that will be required to move it from that 6.5% plus to 8%? I totally agree with you. I think the things we've done right are capex. You have increased the capital expenditure phenomenally. It's 11 lakh crores now. You've been increasing it by 30% every year. What you need to do is to, at the end of the day, and here I want to be very careful, there are certain things you need to do which we can continue doing that, the Samaj Seva schemes, but you also need to make it easier for the wealth creators to pump in more money. Now, my OMCs are doing well. They're producing 19% of the country's revenue, the oil marketing company. Some of our private sector, I think, should also step up a little. I'm not wanting to be critical at all. I think we need to encourage our startups. We need to encourage all those who have those productive entrepreneurial spirit, that fire in the belly. And I am sure that with the kind of political mandate that the government and the Honorable Prime Minister have, that shift movement in the direction from 6.5 consistently to 7 and then beyond 7.
Very
You
important
require
point.
really 8% to grow?
Well, I mean, that, of course, economists have their point of view. Of course, there was one, Raghuram Rajan, who said that we'll never even get to 5%, if you remember. So, economists will throw up numbers, but let's just speak about the numbers in hand, because I'm very glad you touched upon this subject about private entrepreneurs, private capital, etc., because core manufacturing as a percentage of GDP has stagnated, and there's a problem there. India's infrastructure push under initiatives like Gati Shakti, smart cities, massive expressway construction is very visible. We've just come off seeing the world's highest bridge being constructed, but somewhere manufacturing, core manufacturing as a percentage of GDP has lagged. Now, what do you make, how do you believe Make in India needs to be sort of propelled forward? Where's the problem?
Look, there are 2 or 3 levels at which you can deal with it. The overall framework of Make in India is all right. You're encouraging the right people, etc. You need a few more success stories. I mean, the success stories on iPhones, brilliant. You need more success stories on that, and I think those success stories are in the making. But for that, you need to be able to provide a more welcoming, a more benign environment for the wealth creators. I mean, why would anybody... Now, let me tell you, if you ask me, where will international investors locate their manufacturing capacity?
Yeah.
In places where it makes it's economically viable and it makes sense. I mean, you're going to have a very difficult time in relocating industry to a place where you pay an electrician or a plumber $300,000 a year. I mean, I'm not going into names. I'm not talking about individual policies in individual countries. I am just saying, why did China benefit at a particular point? It made more sense for people to locate in China, but China also has become, in many ways, high cost. Why are people locating out of China? So we need to be a little more conscious in getting some of these big...
Yeah, and there has been criticism. You're very right, because there has been criticism that we have too many regulatory requirements, etc., etc. And one is seeing some of those being pruned. The pace has been lacking. Is this because there is a lack of political appetite? You talked about a mandate, but that mandate has shrunk since 2019 or even 2014, as you know.
I wouldn't agree that the mandate has shrunk. I mean, what happened in 2024, if there is any perception of a shrinking mandate, it was recovered by Haryana, Maharashtra and Delhi, and it will be further strengthened by Bihar. No, I'm going somewhere else. By the very nature of the the kind of country we are large, we are democratic, we are robust, we are diverse, and it takes a little longer. I mean, same in the earlier days in China, you wanted to set up an industry, you acquired land, and immediately, nobody could go to court. There were no courts to go to. Today in India, every action that the government takes with the best of will, it can be challenged. How many of my decisions have been challenged in the past? People will go, if you don't win in a tender, you try and squash it by tying it around in litigation. But I think we've got over that. Okay. For the first time, you're seeing large capital-intensive projects being built on time. I mean, that bridge on the Chenab, I saw Lakshmi's tweet where steel meets the sky. I mean, it's an engineering wonder. But more than that, you see, all your projects have been completed not only on time, but within cost bandwidth. I mean, I'm talking about Kartavya Path, Parliament, Bharat Mandapam, Yasho Bhumi, etc. Well, if steel prices go up, there will be a little bit of increase on that account. If cement prices internationally go up. But apart from those pass-through, today the India, if you look at globally, all right, you and I as staunch believers in India, we would say, why 8%? Let's push for more. But the government and governance is ultimately the art of the doable.
Yes.
So you have to take people along. Now, state governments, some of the places where you have BJP governments, UP is a classic case in point. It's growing very well. Some of those states where our BJP has been absent would have come back. We have a lag to catch on. The state I am normally perceived to be part of, Punjab, although I was born in Delhi, my God, you can do whatever you like. I was there yesterday in Punjab for a sad occasion. Dinsa Saab's,
passing.
Khandpat and Kirtan, I mean, you get the feeling that Punjab has just got left behind because either the people have gone to Canada or whatever. So all I'm saying is India is doing well.
Okay.
If your case, and I would subscribe to it, we need to push it a little more. I'm entirely with you.
Okay. So look, the other aspect which is caught up usually in, the political noise, and, India is a vibrant democracy, and why not? Unemployment. Now, that remains a pressing concern, especially for the youth. If you look at the PLFS data, it's showing a jobless rate of about 6% or around theirs. The concerns about job equality. In fact, one of your colleagues, Mr. Piyush Goyal, said that, look, structural changes are needed because, the unicorns that we have, the startups are not creating decent jobs. They are creating jobs, but they're not creating jobs that are high value in that sense. So there's this persistent problem, and there was a target that was identified by the Prime Minister earlier. We're well short of those targets. Would you say that this has been one area where the government hasn't been able to really walk the talk, so to speak?
I don't subscribe to the view, including by those comments on startups by my colleague. Look, let me explain to you. It's like this. Today, you have a figure, you mentioned 6%. I would like it to fall quickly so what are we doing? If you increase manufacturing soaks up. You see, by the very nature of the beast, what is happening in a country like India, if you look at the overall GDP, I mean, bulk is in services, and agriculture, which is 20% or so. I don't know what the latest figure is. Manufacturing is low. So you need to increase the manufacturing sector. You need to produce more jobs in manufacturing. But you've got another challenge. Today, India is at the cutting edge of the new technologies. As more and more advanced technology comes in, a lot of people who are getting jobs there don't need it because the technology will take over. Okay. I think considering the challenges, we've done reasonably well, and I think we will do better. But India is one of the few countries in the world where the manufacturing sector is being revived.
Okay.
I mean, you know what happened in the United States? I mean, the first Trump victory, Rust Belt, because of jobs lost due to trade agreements.
True. You're absolutely right there. No dispute there. Now I'm going to talk about two sensitive issues, which some people say is a larger comment on the legacy. First is, there has been, according to the opposition and some critics, and you've seen those reviews, and in fact you've addressed them in international fora, international channels, that strong political centralization and several institutions like the EC, the CBI, the Enforcement Directorate have been accused of partisanship. What steps is the government taking now to preserve the institutions? Because a large number of cases have again been closed by the Enforcement Directorate. There's been a long period where certain people were sort of indicted by the ED, but it hasn't sort of delivered the results. So there's that concern. There's also this constant talk that, yes, Prime Minister Modi has built successfully a very strong popular image, this direct rapport with voters. But there is a rising political polarization and a shrinking space for dissent, and also the opposition. The opposition says, for example, in Parliament it doesn't get a fair deal. So how do you address some of these comments?
Well, you've got a lot of very interesting thoughts wrapped into your last comment or statements. Let me first start with shrinking political space. I think what is shrinking here is the size of the opposition, and I think the size of the space or the kind of credibility quotient that they will command is not depending on the numbers. It depends on the kind of issues that you raise. I mean, there's a popular saying in political science, genius lies in identifying yourself with a principle. Now, what are the issues with which the opposition is aligning, or rather, what is the opposition? I mean, I am so happy at a personal level to see some of my old friends who politically joined parties other than the BJP. I mean, I'm talking about Shashi, Owaisi ji, Manish Tiwari, when they go outside, they're speaking nation first language. But what is their leader saying here, Rahul? I mean, what kind of statements is he making about the electoral process and undermining? If you have a doubt, go to the Election Commission, challenge it, use all the remedies at your disposal. But, talking nonsense in terms of this has happened, that has happened, and then if you want caste census, we've told you we'll get you the caste census as part of the census. So I think the size of the space will be reflected or will grow or diminish in direct proportion to the kind of issues that you raise, because that's what democracy is all about. Insofar as institutions are concerned, look, there was a period when there were scams galore. There was, I don't even know the alphabet of those scams, and the enforcement agencies were dealing it. But if there are cases of the enforcement agencies going too far or, being out of step, I think they are being reined in also. I mean, they are being reined in within the system and also. But to say that I'm an opposition leader and hence I'm above scrutiny, you will agree with me that that's not a tenable position anybody can take in a democracy.
My final question to you. There was this issue of the farm laws. Everyone said that that would herald another revolution in this country after 1991. Parked, as you know, in the teeth of protests, some of them, of course, very disagreeable. Now we see that those laws are not being sort of reconsidered. Is that a good move? What about also notifying some of the labor laws that lie on the books?
No, the fact that you need good labor laws and etc., I mean, it's a given. I don't think anybody will quarrel with that. Even on the farm laws, let's not go into what happened. I was sitting in the cabinet meeting when one of my colleagues, she applauded them, and then she went outside and started criticizing them. I think the farm laws were intended to achieve an objective. All right, I don't want to go into it whether we did right. Well, the Prime Minister took a very mature decision that the point had come, is no point in getting. But what is the ground reality? Ground reality is that the coverage for MSP has gone up, the amount of MSP being paid has gone up, and I think the farmers are happy. Now, some people want to make political capital out of what I call the residual angst, which is there will be. There are people, I mean, somebody said that the Nakshal element has got into the farm. I don't want to get into that. The Punjabi farmer, the Sikh farmer is a hardworking person. I think he or she, they are content. It's a question of now making sure that those laws, as indeed all other laws, operate in terms. Some laws are no longer on the statute book. But if you were to argue on several other laws which need to be passed, yes, they need to be. Because we have to move from the mindset of a $5 trillion economy, 4.3, but we have to start looking at 20 trillion and above. You cannot have these structural deficiencies within the system, where they come from laws. We have more or less revised on the oil sector, the Oil Field Regulation Act, and 1948 legislation. We've done away with it. I need to find one Guyana in the Andaman Sea, and we will be a $20 trillion economy, if not more.
Well, Mr. Puri, thank you very much for taking what I believe are questions that were intended to obviously bring out some of the issues that many people say have not been addressed. It's been a very fair conversation. I think Mr. Puri has put out his arguments quite convincingly for your viewers. Look forward to more conversations. Thank you very much.